The mafia boss's beautiful bride spent 6 weeks secretly feeding him poison. But on the night of their engagement, she wasn't the only one trying to kill him. When the Godfather collapsed at the dinner table, doctors found something impossible in his blood. His fiancée's slow-acting poison actually forced his liver to fight off a second, instantly fatal toxin slipped in by a rival assassin. His bride's betrayal accidentally saved his life. Now, the deadliest man in New York is waking up, and he is out for blood. Good. Let us pause the movie right here and take in this opening shot. You and I are looking at four most dangerous people on Earth, crammed into the Marchetti estate under chandeliers that cost more than a house. We have mobsters, senators, and crooked judges sipping expensive wine, listening to a jazz band that completely covers up the blood on their hands. It is a room full of apex predators who think they are untouchable. But here is the cruel irony of this scene, guys. Good. These people think their money protects them, but it actually turned them into sitting ducks. The life lesson here is simple. Absolute power does not just corrupt your soul. Good. It traps you in a shared delusion where you forget that the person smiling at you might be the one holding the knife. Good. Now, zoom in on Xavier Marchetti at the head of the table. He is wearing all black, trying so hard to look like his ruthless father, projecting this untouchable dominance. But the bitterest part of this whole shot is the woman sitting right next to him. Elena Voss, good, wrapped in white silk flashing a massive 5-carat diamond. Xavier thinks he is the king, but Elena is the one who chose the music, the flowers, and exactly what goes on his plate. Good. She orchestrated every detail of that delicate piece of salmon sitting right in front of him. The man pulling the strings of the underworld does not even realize he is just a prop in her play. Good. The lesson we can take away is that the most dangerous traps in life are never set by our enemies. They are set by the people pouring our drinks. Good. Then, out of nowhere, this dinner party gets completely derailed. The heavy kitchen doors burst open, and an 8-year-old girl named Sophia comes skidding out onto the cold marble. She is clutching a ragged stuffed bear and screaming at the top of her lungs. "Do not eat that, mister," she yells. Just watch how the entire room freezes. The jazz music dies. Forks stop in midair. You have 40 cold-blooded killers staring at a terrified kid. What breaks my heart is that these hardened criminals, good, guys who order hits before breakfast, are completely paralyzed by one child telling the truth about the poisoned fish. It teaches us a beautiful lesson. No matter how massive a lie is built to be, good, it will always shatter the second someone is brave enough to speak the raw truth. Good, look at how the adults react here. Xavier sits like a statue, his fork shaking in his hand, a man with an ego that Big literally cannot process, looking weak. But Elena? She switches into survivor mode. She stands up, puts her hand over her heart, and drops this perfectly acted gasp. "Sophia," she says, making it sound so sweet. Then the mother, Maria, comes sprinting out of the kitchen with flour on her apron. Maria is screaming for her daughter, showing pure panic, but terrified of what these monsters might do to her baby. The contrast is devastating. You are watching a mother lose her mind out of real love, right next to a sociopath, pretending to care just to save her skin. Good. The lesson is that genuine love is always messy and panicked, while fake affection is perfectly rehearsed. Good. Stick with me here, because this is where it gets brilliant. Sophia points her tiny finger straight at Elena and says, "I saw her pour white powder from her purse." Instantly, the whole room tries to laugh it off. "It is just the cook's jealous kid," a senator chuckles. Good. They are desperate to protect their reality, but hit pause and look down at the end of the table. Don Lucia, the old mafia matriarch, is not smiling. She is squeezing her rosary, staring coldly at the child, then at Elena, and then at the plate. Good. She knows exactly what is happening, and she does not say a single word. It gives me chills. Guys, the lesson here is vital. When the crowd starts laughing loudly to hide their own panic, good, the person who actually survives is the one who stays dead, silent and watches everything. Good. Watch Xavier's reaction. This is the moment that ruins his life. He slowly puts that fork down, like it is an unexploded bomb. He does not turn to his wife. He does not look at his rich friends. His eyes are locked entirely on the terrified 8-year-old girl. Good. "Little girl," he whispers, "are you sure?" The tragic part is that a normal husband would immediately defend his wife, but a man obsessed with power only cares about his public image. Sophia holds her ground, squeezing her toy bear like a shield, good, staring right back at Elena. Then Elena slowly walks around the table. She knows the entire room is watching her now, and she absolutely loves it. Here is the lesson. A truly toxic person does not run away when caught. They thrive in chaos. Good. Twisting the tension to be the star of the show. Good. Let us pause right here and look at Elena. She drops down to the kid's eye level, her expensive ivory silk dress pooling on the floor. Her smile? A total masterclass in gaslighting. She tells the little girl she just saw the chef adding salt. Good. Trying to rewrite the kid's reality. But Sophia's not having it. With the terrifying precision of a traumatized witness, she shoots back that Elena took it from a silver purse and stirred it in. You can see the tiny twitch in Elena's jaw, a flash of pure, good, contained rage. And right behind them, Marco Bellini, a guy with 31 years in the mob, leans in. He is the enforcer of their collective ego, ready to protect the family image at all costs. The lesson here is simple. You can dress a lie in expensive silk, good, but the absolute truth always finds a way to speak up. Good. Now watch Marco whisper the fatal trap into Xavier's ear. He tells him every single person in the room is watching, and if he pushes that plate away, the whole coast will say the boss got spooked by a child. Xavier's jaw tightens up. Good. This right here is the fatal flaw of the megalomaniac. His entire self-worth depends on what other people think. To him, this dining chair is a throne, and a king cannot flinch. Sensing the disaster, little Sophia actually lunges forward. Good. In a desperate attempt to save his life, she grabs his plate and yanks it right to her chest. Red sauce spills everywhere, soaking into her little stuffed bear. She cries out that he cannot eat it. Her raw, messy desperation clashes so hard with the cold, good, artificial calm of the room. It reminds us of a bitter truth. Sometimes the people who care the most are the ones we push away to save our own pride. Good. A scandalized gasp rolls through the dining hall. A heavy-set capo actually chuckles, while a judge's wife hides an amused little smirk. They think this is just cute theater, completely blind to the lethal reality playing out. Good. Xavier rises from his chair with the slow, terrifying gravity of an apex predator, regaining control. He softly demands she look at him and give it back. The little girl's lip trembles. She looks so utterly helpless that Maria lets out a sound like a wounded animal. Good. But Xavier just reaches out and wraps his hand around the plate. He does not pull, he just waits. He uses his sheer psychological weight to force her to submit. It is a chilling thing to witness, but it teaches a stark lesson. Good. The most dangerous manipulators do not need to raise their voices. They just use dead-cold patience to break your boundaries down. Good. When her small fingers finally give way, Xavier takes the plate with the calm precision of a surgeon. Then Don Lucia delivers the ultimate test, ordering him to listen to the child. But his pathology has already taken the wheel. To prove his absolute dominance, he has to prove the little girl wrong. You and I are watching a man seal his own fate. He addresses good. Pause it right here, guys. Just look at this masterpiece of irony. Xavier is playing the absolute perfect gentleman, kissing the knuckles of his totally sociopathic bride, Elena. He actually apologizes to her, but biology does not care about your ego. Good. The poison hits hard. The crystal wine glass shatters on the marble floor, his knees give out, and a dark thread of blood drips down his chin. But the part that actually breaks your heart. Watch Tony Hawk Russo. 200 pounds of hardened Brooklyn muscle. Good. Reacting on pure, desperate instinct to catch the only father figure he has ever known. It is a harsh truth of life. We often give our deepest, most fierce loyalty to the exact people who deserve it the least, and it usually ends up breaking our own hearts. Hawk catches Xavier right before he hits the floor, and the illusion of high society completely vanishes. These tough guys instantly get down into paranoid, trigger-happy chaos. Metal flashes under the chandeliers as they lock down the room. Good. But look at Dr. Salvatore Greco. He does not panic at all. He just stands up, holding his old leather medical bag like a priest holding a Bible. He has spent 19 years playing God for this family, throwing away his soul to be their personal handyman. Good. Now he walks straight into a crossfire to save a man who is already gone. That is the real tragedy. Sometimes you spend your entire life trying to fix other people's broken messes, only to wake up and realize you trapped yourself in a cold cage of your own making. Good. Let's pause the movie right here, guys. Greco is checking Xavier's fading pulse, muttering that he got hit with something fast. But the real show? That is Elena. She throws herself onto her dying fiancé, letting his blood ruin her expensive silk dress. Good. Her tears are flowing, but notice how her hair is perfectly in place. Unlike Luca, who actually suffered from a twisted love, Elena is pulling off a total scam. I mean, it is an absolute masterclass in fake grief. And then look at little Sophia standing there. Good. Total silence. No tears. She is just staring at Elena's performance, realizing the monsters in her closet are actually the adults in the room. It just goes to show you, the most dangerous people in your life usually wear the prettiest masks. Good. Let's hit pause for a second, because you and I really need to look at who actually holds the power here. We have all these supposed adults completely snowed by a crying bride, while the only one with her eyes wide open is a terrified little kid. Good. At the head of the table sits Donna Lucia, colder than a winter grave, locking down the house with one flat sentence. No one breathes unless she signs off on it. A trapped politician just sits there, sweating through his expensive suit, completely forgetting he has legs to run. It is funny, isn't it? We teach kids to look up to adults for safety, but sometimes the grown-ups are the most blind. The lesson here is pretty simple. Age never guarantees wisdom, and sometimes you have to trust your own gut, even if everyone else looks away. Just look at the doctor desperately trying to freeze the crime scene, before the medics even show up. Meanwhile, the loyal housekeeper is staring at that one specific plate with the gold flower, knowing exactly who it was meant for. And then there is Elena. She leans in to kiss the man she just tried to put in the ground, and it is the most hollow, freezing peck you will ever see. But the absolute kicker? Her eyes immediately dart to the back door. She is terrified. And little Sophia catches that exact look. Instantly matching it to a memory from 2 hours ago. It just proves that you can fake the tears, but you can never fake the peace of mind. Guilt is a heavy coat, and no matter how well you think you are wearing it, someone is always going to notice the seams tearing apart. The little girl's mind plays it back perfectly. Elena handing over an envelope, the guy nodding like a paid ghost. But before Sophia can even process it, her mother yanks her back against the wall, trying to make them both invisible. You have to feel for her. She thinks keeping her head down will keep her child alive in a house full of monsters. Over the sirens, Donna Lucia is already barking orders. No cops, private hospital wing, absolute silence. The medics just nod and load the dying man like they are picking up dry cleaning. It is a brutal thing to watch. We all think keeping quiet keeps out of the crossfire, but the truth is, silence never really protects you from a burning house. It just makes sure nobody hears you when the roof finally decides to cave in. As they wheel him out, the poor guy actually forces his eyes open for a split second. He is swimming in the dark, but he manages to lock eyes, with the little girl hugging her battered teddy bear. He gives her this tiny nod, like he is saying, I know you see it too. Then we cut to the hospital, and it is an absolute joke. These mobsters park their cars across the emergency lanes, like they own the concrete, and honestly, they probably do. The nurses and doctors are just staring at the floor, totally broken down by the threat of violence. The guards stand there like stone walls. It makes you realize something pretty tragic about power. You can use your money and your muscle to buy all the compliance in the world, but you will never actually be able to afford genuine loyalty. Inside that sterile room, the only sounds are the steady beep of the heart monitor and the click of Donna Lucia's rosary beads. She is sitting there like a marble statue, perfectly dressed, not a single hair out of place, while her own blood is fighting for his life. She is using religion to pace her own thoughts, plotting her revenge instead of praying for a miracle. Out in the cold hallway, the mother is doing the exact opposite. She is wrapping her own body around her daughter, trying to block out the poison of this mob family. It is such a sharp contrast. One woman holds all the power, and the other has nothing but fear. But it reminds you that real strength is not about how tightly you control the room. It is about what you are willing to endure to protect the people you love. Stick with me here, because this is where the dynamic totally flips. The guard treats the mother like dirt, refusing to let her pass. She immediately shrinks back, totally defeated. But then, the clicking of those beads stops. The matriarch steps out, and the heavy hitter instantly backs down like a scolded dog. She looks right past the terrified mother and talks directly to the little girl holding the bear. By just acknowledging the kid, the boss lady grants them a temporary pass. It is a brilliant, terrifying chess move. The mother is shaking, realizing she just got saved by the scariest person in the building. Life is funny that way. We spend so much time running from the darkness, only to find out that sometimes the wolves are the only ones who can protect you from the storm. The mother sits there vibrating with panic, treating her hospital chair like it might explode. A suit walks up and whispers to the matriarch about a synthetic poison. Does she care? Not even a little. She completely ignores the report. Too busy studying the little girl, realizing this kid is her star witness. Then the victim's sister walks in. Her eyes are bloodshot, but there is not a single tear on her face. She has been trained her whole life to lock her feelings in a steel box. It is heartbreaking. People always mistake a blank face for toughness, but the reality is much sadder. Swallowing your pain does not actually make you strong. It just guarantees that you will slowly poison yourself from the inside out, until there is absolutely nothing left of who you used to be. Good. You have to respect the sister's approach here. She drops right down to the kid's eye level, stripping away all that scary adult authority. She uses a soft, steady voice, basically building a safe bridge directly into the girl's frightened mind. Good. And the kid just opens the floodgates. Because she is in shock, her brain recorded everything in high definition. She spits out the exact time, the exact corner of the room, and how the bride pulled the poison out of a tiny silver purse. Good. The little girl is practically a walking security camera right now. It goes to show how simple human connection really is. If you want someone to open up and hand you the truth, you cannot stand over them and demand it. Good. You have to get down in the dirt with them and prove that you are truly ready to listen. Good. The little girl tells the whole story without shedding a single tear. She describes the special plate and the hidden silver tool like she is reading a grocery list. But then, her voice drops to a tiny whisper when she mentions the second man. Good. She remembers his exact words. Tonight has to work. Boom, that is the kill shot right there. The matriarch and her enforcer just trade one single look. They instantly know this was a fully planned assassination. Right then, the doctor walks out, sleeves rolled up, looking completely drained. It is wild how one sentence from a terrified kid can flip a criminal empire upside down. It is a solid reminder for all of us. We spend so much energy worrying about the big dramatic threats. But the absolute truth usually hides inside the quietest whispers. The doctor is running on fumes, but he brings good news. The victim barely ate the food which saved his life. Donna Lucia does not even blink. Then the doctor drops the real hammer. This was not a one-time event. His blood work shows he has been slowly poisoned for weeks. The clicking of the rosary finally stops. The matriarch realizes her son has been sleeping next to his own murderer. Then we see the guy wake up. He is tasting metal, tied to 50 different machines. His chest absolutely screaming in pain. It is a horrible way to come back to the living. It really hits you right in the gut, doesn't it? We always build our walls so high to keep the bad guys out, but the most lethal betrayals never break through the front door. They come from the people sitting right next to us at the dinner table. The guy wakes up and the first thing he sees is his mother. She has not slept, just sat there, holding the room hostage with her cold stare. She does not hug him. She does not shed a single tear. Instead, she interrogates him about why he ignored his gut feelings about his bride. The poor guy closes his eyes, drowning in shame. He knows he messed up big time, and what does his mother do? She turns that shame into a weapon, basically chaining him to her will for life. It breaks your heart to witness. We all make terrible choices sometimes, but we have to be careful. The moment you let someone use your worst mistakes to control you, you are not really surviving. You are just trading one dark prison for another. Listen up, guys, because this is where we have to hit pause on the movie. Look at our guy here, trying to laugh off the ultimate betrayal before the physical agony shuts him up. His right-hand man walks in and drops the hammer. A 6-week timeline of chronic poisoning. The extreme fatigue, the nerve pain, our boss rationalized all of it as just the stress of the job. The bitterest part isn't even the poison in his blood. It is the absolute desperation of the human mind, trying to pretend the woman he sleeps next to isn't actively killing him. He stares at the ceiling, the denial finally breaking, and asks to see the kid. The henchman looks to the old matriarch for permission, and you realize the truth. We only lie to ourselves because the truth costs us everything. The little girl walks into this sterile room with no shoes on, clutching a stuffed bear like it is the only safe thing left in the world. She stops just out of reach, measuring the exact distance between safety and a threat like a combat veteran. And this is where it just breaks your heart. Our cartel boss pushes through unimaginable physical agony, ignoring the doctor entirely, just so he can sit up and look this traumatized kid in the eye. They share this heavy, silent stare. He sees that same hypervigilance in her that he completely failed to have himself. It is a brutal mirror. The irony of fate is just crushing here. The greatest teachers of survival are usually the ones who were forced to navigate the darkest, scariest rooms long before they ever should have had to. Now, you do not usually see an apex predator apologize for anything, but Xavier actually looks at this little girl and admits he made a massive, catastrophic mistake by taking that poisoned plate and making her watch him eat it. That kind of genuine regret from a mobster? We are witnessing a total character reset, but look at Sophia. She does not cry. She does not flinch. She just stares at his pale face and asks, plain and simple, if his rotting insides hurt. When he says yes, her expression stays ice cold, like she considers that a totally fair trade. Then she reaches into her pocket and pulls out a stained, crumpled piece of paper. It is the poison packet. Good. Sometimes the people we think need protecting are actually the ones holding all the evidence we missed. Good. Let us just hit pause and look at how this 8-year-old operates. Sophia explains that she dug the torn wrapper out of the trash the exact second the evil stepmother left the kitchen. She hid it inside a dry pasta box. Good. Hoarding resources like someone who has lived her whole life in a war zone. The doctor bags it up immediately like a proper crime scene investigator. But watch the grandmother, Donna Lucia. She totally ignores the medical protocols, looks right at the kid, and calls her brave. This is the tragic reality of growing up in a mafia family. They actively reward a child for dancing with death, treating a lethal game of cat and mouse like it is just normal family bonding. Good. The hardest truth is that normalizing trauma only guarantees that the trauma never ends. Good. You and I have to appreciate the sheer audacity of what happens next. The hallway outside erupts before Elena even steps foot in the room. This woman treats her entire life like a movie where she is the absolute star. Good. She literally took the time to change out of her party dress and put on a funeral-ready black velvet outfit before rushing to the hospital. She bursts in doing this flawless, Oscar-worthy performance of a heartbroken wife. Good. Her mascara is perfectly smudged, just enough to look sad, but not enough to ruin her perfect face. It is chilling to watch. She is projecting this fake, loud grief so she can control every single person in the room. But here is the lesson for all of us. Good. The loudest person in the room is usually the one with the most to hide. Good. Watch the body language here, because it is absolutely brutal. Elena throws her arms around our poisoned cartel leader, expecting him to play his part in this tragic romance. But Xavier just lies there like a stone. He does not hug her back. His eyes are dead, staring at her with the cold, empty calculation of a killer evaluating a threat. You can actually see the exact second Elena realizes she is losing control. Her mask slips. She immediately starts talking too fast, blaming her security guys for why she was not there. Then her panicked eyes dart around the room and lock right onto the little girl standing in the corner. The child is the one variable she did not script. Life is funny that way. The perfect plan is always ruined by the one small thing you thought did not matter. Panic makes people aggressive, so Elena instantly demands they kick the kid out of the room. But the old matriarch steps right in her path, delivering this ice-cold reminder that Elena is not the queen of the family just yet. Then Xavier does something incredible. He does not scream at his wife. He does not call her a murderer. He uses that exact same dead, flat voice he uses when he orders a hit, and casually mentions that his security team is pulling every single frame of the kitchen security footage. He drops cold, hard facts right into the middle of her fake emotional performance. Hitting pause right here, watching the trap close on a narcissist is wild. It reminds us that no matter how good the lie is, the truth does not need to shout to completely destroy it. Stick with me here, because for half a second, her entire brain short-circuits. We get a front-row seat to her absolute panic. Her eye twitches. A fake sob literally gets stuck in her throat because she forgets to breathe. But true villains are nothing if not adaptable. She swallows the panic, loudly agrees that they should check the tapes, and then does the most twisted thing imaginable. She blames the 8-year-old kid. She points the finger at her own victim and demands an apology, and across the room, little Sophia just stands there, not even blinking, watching this grown woman completely unravel. It breaks your heart for the kid, but it also teaches you something real. People will burn down the entire world just to avoid facing the consequences of their own actions. Elena makes up some weak excuse and bolts from the room as fast as she came in. The second she is gone, the air in the room just gets lighter. But then Sophia drops a truth bomb that leaves everyone speechless. The little girl calmly points out that Elena did not look scared when she saw Xavier dying. She only looked terrified when the security cameras were mentioned. 3 hardened mafia killers just freeze and stare at this child. Xavier looks at her, and you can see the profound, tragic respect in his eyes. He tells her she is smarter than his grown men, and he means it. It is so bitter, man. This kid had to develop a razor-sharp, predatory mind just to survive her own family. The tragedy of growing up too fast is that you can never go back to being a child again. But just when you think they have her cornered, Marco walks in and everything falls apart. The security tapes are gone. Exactly 20 minutes of video from the kitchen have been wiped completely clean off the main servers and the backups, without a single trace. This was not some messy crime of passion. This was a highly organized, premeditated strike. You can physically see the betrayal hit Xavier right in the chest. He realizes he is completely alone. The call is coming from inside the house. Somebody high up in his own organization helped his wife try to put him in the ground. It is the ultimate irony of fate for a mob boss. You spend your whole life building walls to keep your enemies out. Good. Only to realize you locked the real monsters inside the house with you. Good. We need to look closely at what happens the very next morning. The sheer nerve of this woman is unbelievable. Elena completely flips the script, calling all the top mafia captains down to the discipline room. Good. She ditches the dramatic funeral velvet and shows up wearing a sharp, conservative blue suit. She is playing the calm, rational investigator now. She tosses a hard drive on the table and claims her private security guys magically recovered the missing video. Good. This is what truly dangerous people do. They do not just deny what happened, they build an entirely fake reality and force you to live inside it. It is a chilling reminder of how easily the narrative can be stolen from us. If you do not tell your own story, good, someone else will happily write a nightmare for you. Good. The video she plays for these men is a terrifying masterpiece of fake evidence. It shows a perfectly normal afternoon. Elena is just smiling and talking to the cooks, not a drop of poison in sight. But then, the perfect scapegoat walks into the frame. Good. The video shows little Sophia, wearing a bright yellow dress, reaching her tiny hands right toward the poisoned food. Elena pauses the tape right there. She does not yell or call the kid a murderer. Good. She just sits back in her chair and lets this fabricated lie infect the minds of every man in the room. She uses their own eyes against them, silently passing her own lethal guilt onto an innocent child. It just goes to show you that seeing is not always believing. Good. Sometimes the most convincing pictures are painted with the darkest lies. Good. Let us just hit pause right here and look at Elena's absolute masterclass in manipulation. She stands there acting like a reluctant martyr, practically crying as she says she would never want to point the finger at a little kid. But by even planting that seed, good, she triggers the deep, quiet paranoia of every cartel lieutenant in that room. You can actually see the poison taking root as these hardened criminals shift uncomfortably in their expensive seats. And who pays the highest price for this manufactured delusion? Good. Maria, a totally terrified mother who gets dragged into hours of brutal interrogation. It is a bitter reality we all have to learn eventually. The innocent are always the very first casualties when a narcissist decides to play their twisted games. Good. The cruelty of this world escalates with terrifying speed. By mid-afternoon, this mother and her tiny daughter are stripped of their housing and thrown into total exile. But watch Sophia closely in that windowless holding room. Good. Most kids would be screaming for their lives, right? Not her. There are zero tears, no begging. She just anchors herself to the floor, retreating into this heartbreaking state of pure survival instinct. Good. And when they finally drag her into the darkened study of the cartel patriarch, the contrast is just staggering. Xavier is physically poisoned but mentally absolutely lethal. He points to a massive leather chair. She physically has to climb up into it, with her little sneakers dangling in the air. She is just a microscopic piece of bait sitting across from an apex predator. Xavier drops the hammer, demanding the truth, and telling her they have video proof of her at the scene. This is the exact moment where grown men usually fold, but this little girl does not even blink. With the detachment of a seasoned mobster, she tells him his video is completely fake. Her proof, the footage shows her in a yellow sweater. But she knows her mother dyed that exact sweater pink months ago to cover up a stain. It is absolutely brilliant. A digital frame job, good, completely dismantled by the reality of a poor mother doing cheap laundry. Xavier is a ruthless killer, but his brain processes that undeniable fact instantly. The illusion shatters, and he immediately barks orders to dig up the original, good, untouched photographs to find out who is actually playing him. Good. Today, you and I are going to unpack this nightmare together. We are witnessing the terrifying paranoia of a man who suddenly realizes his castle has paper walls. Xavier gives his men a strict 20-minute deadline to find old photos of the child. Marco races back in 18. And right there, inside the folder, are 12 undeniable pictures of little Sophia wearing a soft pink cardigan with a tiny strawberry. Not yellow, pink. Good. It is the ultimate proof that the security footage was manipulated from the inside. Just watch the matriarch, Donna Lucia, in the background. She does not scream or throw things. She simply takes one incredibly slow, calculating breath. Good. Her perfectly controlled empire has a rat, and the absolute silence in that room is somehow louder than a gunshot. Good. Look at the gears turning in his head as the horrible truth finally lands. Xavier realizes his fiancée did not just make a mistake. She staged this entire deception weeks ago. Good. Think about the absolute ice in her veins to smile at him every morning, while secretly paying off hackers and burning through private server farms. The lesson here is brutal but undeniable. Just because someone sleeps in your bed, does not mean they are on your side. Proximity never guarantees loyalty. By 6 o'clock, Xavier heads back to his estate. And here is where his massive ego takes over. His body is literally failing him, but he violently refuses the wheelchair. He forces himself to walk through his own front door, buttoning his expensive suit jacket right over his bloody medical bandages. The absolute second that heavy front door closes behind him, Xavier issues one single terrifying word: sweep. His enforcers instantly tear through the massive estate like ghosts, using these high-tech scanners that let out a sickening, continuous hum. They are literally ripping his perfect life to shreds, unscrewing air vents and dumping out drawers. And 22 minutes into the chaos, the machine finally screams. His security chief drops to his knees right under the beautiful walnut desk in the main study. He pulls out a tiny, hidden audio transmitter no bigger than a fingernail. It is meant to die after 3 weeks, but the battery is still warm. Someone has been listening to every single breath he takes in the one room where he thought he was untouchable. For 3 straight weeks, this little piece of plastic has been feeding his darkest secrets to his enemies. A normal guy would smash the room to pieces, right? Not Xavier. He does not even blink. He just sits down and presses his bare hand against the wood of his grandfather's desk, built back in 1947. It is his way of reminding himself exactly who he is. Then, Marco brings in the security logs and the final nail goes into the coffin. The data proves Elena snuck into this exact room 4 different times, while Xavier was out of the country. Her excuse was looking for a seating chart that was never even kept there. As the sheer weight of the betrayal settles into the air, his mother, Donna Lucia, slowly walks over to the far bookshelves in absolute, chilling silence. Watch the matriarch go to work here, exposing the absolute, deeply ingrained paranoia of this crime family. She reaches right behind the 3rd shelf and reveals a hidden wall safe, locked with a 3-digit code that only the actual bloodline knows. No outsiders allowed, ever. But when she pulls it, the heavy steel door is already unlocked. She stares right into the dark cavity, and her face stays completely frozen. That is decades of Mafia survival training keeping her heart rate down. Her voice is barely a whisper when she finally tells her son that a file is gone. Xavier walks over and looks inside. 5 thick Manilo folders are still sitting there, but the 6th one is missing, and that single empty space is a devastating, surgical strike straight into the heart of his empire. Xavier does not even need to look at an index to know exactly what was taken. His brain instantly identifies the missing folder as the master shipping ledger for the Brooklyn waterfront. We are talking about the holy grail of their entire operation smuggling routes, delivery schedules, and the names of every corrupt customs agent they own. Marco starts cursing in Italian because he knows they are completely doomed. If the feds get this, they all go to prison forever. But Xavier is already doing the math, figuring out who has the massive amount of cash required to buy this kind of intelligence. Marco hesitates, locking eyes with the matriarch in a moment of pure, sickening terror. There is only one ghost wealthy enough to pull this off. Victor Kane. Now, this is where the history of this family turns absolutely stomach-churning. You have to rewind 15 years to understand the pure evil of Victor Kane. He is the man who ran Xavier's father off the highway, crushing his black Lincoln against a concrete barrier. But the sickest part? Kane actually showed up at the funeral, put his hand on young Xavier's shoulder, and offered his fake condolences while the boy cried over the casket. It is a level of psychopathic nerve that just defies logic. Xavier slowly rubs a faded scar on his face, a physical memory of that horrible day as the terrible reality washes over him. The woman he was about to marry, the woman sleeping in his own bed, it is actually a weapon wielded by the exact same monster who murdered his father in cold blood. Right in the middle of this nightmare, the housekeeper, Constance, quietly steps into the room. She has been serving this family for 38 years, hands always folded neatly over her apron, and she unknowingly drops a massive bombshell. A week ago, a strange van delivered a huge bouquet of dark red roses, specifically meant for Elena. But while Constance was trimming the stems, she noticed a weird white powder stuck to the leaves. Not thinking anything of it, she assumed it was just cheap plant food and washed it straight down the sink. It is wildly ironic when you think about it. The massive, brilliant assassination plot of a rival crime boss was entirely ruined because an old lady with zero tactical training just wanted to keep the kitchen counters clean. The absolute horror hits Xavier and his mother at the exact same time. The chaos from the night before was not just a warning. It was a literal dress rehearsal for a biological murder. Their entire fortress has been ripped wide open. Donna Lucia wastes no time. Good. She marches straight out to the garage apartments and tells Maria to pack 2 bags immediately, forcing the terrified mother and child to move inside the main mansion. But Maria is practically shaking, twisting a kitchen towel in her hands. Good. She begs to just run away to Queens, pleading to be left alone. She might be at the very bottom of the food chain, but her survival instincts are razor sharp. She already knows the hardest lesson of all. Getting too close to absolute power does not keep you warm. Good. It just burns you alive. Let's hit pause for a second, because the matriarch's response here is absolutely brutal. She doesn't offer a shoulder to cry on. Instead, she coldly rips apart Maria's illusion of choice. She lays out the stark, terrifying reality there is an organized, heavily armed crew actively trying to wipe her kid off the map. Donna Lucia presents a flawlessly calculated trap. Back in an unfortified apartment in Queens, Maria and her daughter are sitting ducks in a window. But inside the Mafia estate, they are locked behind massive walls, armed guards, and attack dogs. This is the exact moment you watch Stockholm Syndrome take root. The captor intentionally isolates the victim, making themselves look like the one and only god of survival. It is a genius. Terrible move. The psychological manipulation kicks into high gear the second they step into the room. They dump this poor family into a sprawling, opulent suite, a massive shock to their old, struggling life. Little Sophia gets this giant 4-poster bed and an ancient bonsai tree, twisted by decades of patient hands. The whole setup is designed to completely overwhelm their senses. Now watch Xavier as he enters the scene. This is the irony of fate right here. The big bad mob boss is forced to lean on a wooden cane, totally shattering his god-complex ego. He is dressed down in a dark sweater and slippers, like somebody's grandpa. He actually asks for permission to come in, a totally fake little gesture of respect, before dragging his broken body into a chair. The trap is officially set. Stick with me here, because we are about to watch the exact moment their minds lock together. Xavier starts his little chat by asking if she is scared. The kid admits she is terrified, but points to her stuffed bear, Mr. Beans, as her tiny shield. Then she casually drops that her dad was crushed to death in a building collapse when she was 4, leaving her with nothing but the fading smell of cinnamon. Now, look at Xavier's face. He is an apex predator. He has ordered hits and wiped out bloodlines without blinking an eye. But in all his 37 years of being a ruthless crime lord, he has never actually sat down and looked at the collateral damage. He is suddenly forced to swallow an emotional pill his twisted brain has spent a lifetime fighting against. You can practically hear the gears grinding in his highly defended ego. The little girl looks right through him and asks the million-dollar question, "Are you a bad man?" Notice how a mob boss always builds a custom moral universe to justify being a monster. He admits he does terrible things, but immediately pulls out his sacred rulebook. Absolute protection of kids, absolute loyalty to the family, and absolute honesty at his table. But then Sophia, with the innocent logic of a child, points out that his own fiancée Elena broke that third rule. Xavier's reaction is pure chills. He doesn't get mad. He flashes this small, terrifyingly genuine smile, his first in days. It is the look of a predator realizing it is hunting season. The kid just accidentally gave him the green light. Watching from the dark hallway, Donna Lucia realizes the entire game has changed. Xavier isn't talking to this kid like a mafia kingpin, and he isn't playing the wounded victim either. He sounds like a quiet, regular uncle. You are watching the generational curse of this bloody family finally crack. But as Xavier grabs his cane to leave, the kid stops him cold. Let's pause and appreciate the absolute irony of trauma. We all know how fear wires you to notice the details normal people ignore. She tells him she saw Elena's partner days ago, waiting at her bus stop in a black sedan. Her biggest red flag, the car had curtains in the windows. A normal person walks right past that. But a highly vigilant kid knows exactly what danger looks like hiding in plain sight. Xavier freezes dead in his tracks, a textbook stress response hitting his nervous systems. Standing right there in this little girl's bedroom, the mob boss feels his entire reality shatter. These assassins were stalking this fragile kid way before anyone poisoned his own coffee. Cut to 6 o'clock the next morning, Dr. Greco stumbles into the estate looking like a ghost. His skin is pale, but his posture is wrecked from pulling all-night chemical analysis. He drops the lab results right on the desk, skipping the usual mafia pleasantries. The poison the kid found? It is a heavy, nasty derivative of wolfsbane. A fast-acting, deadly neurotoxin cleverly disguised as an everyday garden plant. They were treating a mafia hit like a bad case of the flu. Greco breaks down the terrifying science behind this flower, tapping the raw lab data. If you take a massive dose, your heart stops in 60 minutes flat, and it leaves zero trace for the morgue to find. But the psychological torture is so much worse. Good. When they microdose you over weeks, you don't die. Your brain and body just slowly fall apart. You stop sleeping, your reflexes die, and you can barely think straight. It is brilliant and cruel, forcing the victim to think they are just aging or burning out. Good. Watch Marco in the background, crossing his arms and sinking into pure guilt. Their massive security team completely blew it. They literally watched their boss get poisoned to death and wrote it off as a stressful week at the office. Good. Xavier sits there like a stone statue, his hand gripping the desk while his thumb rubs an old scar. It is a desperate, subconscious trick to keep from completely losing his mind. He forces Marco to explain exactly how blind he was. Marco lists out the deliveries. Good. And here is the sickening irony. Every single dose was dressed up as an act of true love. The morning espresso brought right to his bed. The weekend desserts she insisted on making alone. She hid a murder behind the exact things we think of as romance. Over by the window, you see Donna Lucia totally panic, realizing she ate those same meals. But Dr. Greco cuts her off with cold, clinical facts. Elena is a surgical psychopath. She didn't poison the whole family. She only wanted to destroy Xavier. Good. She slipped the poison perfectly into his specific plate. That is what makes this so intensely personal. The killer builds a fake bubble of safety by eating from the exact same serving dish, playing God with the silverware. Now, listen up, guys. Good. Because this is where the pure evil of this plot really shines. Marco flips the investigation over to the money. Over just 2 weeks, $3 million had been surgically sliced out of Xavier's private accounts. It was a flawless two-step trap. First, good. She melts his brain with the poison, and then she uses his confusion to get him to sign real, binding checks. That stolen money was immediately blasted out across a dizzying maze of fake companies all over the world before anyone even knew it was gone. Good. Every single transfer was perfectly timed to dodge the bank's alarms. She made her moves on the exact nights the poison gave him those blinding migraines. Xavier closes his eyes, finally facing the absolute humiliation of what happened. She weaponized his love. Good. Waiting until his brain was practically shutting down to slide papers under his pen. And he just told himself he was getting old, letting his ego hide the terrifying truth. But then Marco drops the final, devastating bomb on the desk. Good. A legal contract handing Elena total, unchecked power over the family's massive foundation the second he becomes medically unfit. She wasn't just grabbing some quick cash, she was legally writing him out of his own life. A complete masterpiece of a sociopath. The paperwork actually has the official stamp of Elena's owner, proving this whole betrayal was a massive family effort. Marco's voice goes completely flat, because he knows what this means. This specific fund held $40 million, good, meant exclusively for orphans. You and I are probably staring at the screen thinking the exact same thing. How do you get that cold? Stealing money meant to fix a mobster's guilty conscience requires a brain completely empty of human decency. Good. Xavier's hand slowly balls into a fist, the shark finally waking up after weeks of sedation. And then Father Antonio appears in the doorway. The old priest refused to bless Elena from day one. He looked into her eyes and saw the hollow, good empty void long before the lab ever found the poison. Good. The old priest's absolute disgust hits the hardest. Elena didn't just break the law, she spit on their tribal code. That is the trigger. Xavier stands up, leaving his cane behind. This is that crazy human glitch, where white-hot rage shuts off physical pain. Good. The fog is gone, the ruthless boss is back online, barking orders to lock down the cash. Running on pure adrenaline, Marco finds the smoking gun the fake companies all trace back to the Kane family lawyers. Meanwhile, good. The hitman Hawk just locked his eyes on Elena's house, starting a 16-hour death watch. It leaves us with a brutal life lesson. Sometimes the people you trust most are holding the knife, good, and the fragile strangers you decide to protect are the only ones who end up saving your life. Good. Let us pause right here and appreciate the sheer nerve of Elena's exit. She packs her bags and plays the absolute perfect victim, acting like the heavy air of suspicion is just too much for her fragile soul to bear. It is a brilliant performance. Good. She keeps those big dark sunglasses bolted to her face so nobody can see the ice-cold calculation in her eyes. The regular doorman buys the whole heartbroken routine. But Hawk is not a civilian, he is a hunter. He notices the subtle, good, rhythmic shifting of a black van down the block. It moves just enough to dodge the regular security patrols, but Hawk reads the street like a chessboard. Within 15 minutes, he pulls the logs and slaps a name on the ghost watching her, Daniel Cross. Good. Hawk knows that name the second it hits the screen. Cross is not just some random hired muscle. He is a ghost who moves dirty money for the Kane family without ever tripping a federal wire. Now, good. You and I know this means the biggest predators in the city are pulling the strings. Hawk does not hesitate. He grabs the keys to a beat-up utility truck and tails, cross through the dark streets. Good. They end up at one of those high-end mahogany bars where expensive lawyers go to hide their sins. Cross slides into a dark corner booth. He does not order a drink. He does not look at his phone. He just sits there with his shoulders pulled tight. Good. Radiating the exact nervous energy you see in a cornered dog, waiting for its master to bring the leash. Good. The master finally walks in, and it is a brutal gut punch. Cashmere coat custom suit the flawless armor of a man who destroys lives with a fountain pen instead of a gun. Hawk watches from the shadows as the camera snaps the proof. It is Sebastian Voss. Good. Elena's own flesh and blood brother. The guy is a high-functioning narcissist who could lie to a judge without his heart rate bumping up a single beat. The sit-down is a masterpiece of paranoia. They do not shake hands. They do not smile. Good. A thick white envelope slides across the polished wood, perfectly hidden behind a napkin holder. Just a cold, dead transfer of sins. Then they walk out through totally different doors, moving like ghosts who know exactly how deep the water is. Good. Hawk locks the evidence down tighter than a federal vault. Back at the mansion, Marco lays the brutal truth right on the desk. This was never a crime of passion. This was a calculated execution funded by old money and run by the very woman he was supposed to marry. Good. Xavier just sits there in the heavy silence. He slowly twists his father's gold signet ring, locking himself back into his violent bloodline. You and I have probably both made this mistake. We think the monster is hiding outside in the dark when the truth is, good, the people we love are busy building the cage right around us. That is the true tragedy here. The man who just wanted to love her is dead and buried. The cold-blooded cartel kingpin just woke up, and he is starving. Good. Today you and I are going to analyze the absolute darkest corner of a broken heart. For 15 long years, Xavier wore that gold ring, like a bandage holding his soul together. Tonight? Good. He is grinding it against his knuckle like a man who just realized his whole religion is a lie. This is no longer a simple turf war. This is a knife buried straight into his chest. Victor Kane tried to turn his wedding day into a literal bloodbath. Good. Donna Lucia walks in quiet as a shadow. She sets a mug of black coffee on the wood and asks what he wants to do next. He does not even look at his mother. He just stares out into the pitch-black night, his eyes entirely locked on the single, good, lonely yellow light burning in little Sophia's window across the yard. Good. Xavier breaks years of brutal family tradition with a single breath. He tells his mother he will not strike back like his father always did, screaming and firing blindly into the dark. No, he is going to play the bleeding, crippled animal. It is the oldest, good, sickest trick in the Predator playbook. He plans to hand his enemies the sweet illusion of control, give them enough rope to hang themselves, and then slaughter them all in one quiet motion. Donna Lucia looks at him and sees the exact same monster she married, good, but Xavier claims the darkness as his own. Meanwhile, across the frozen grass, little Sophia is wide awake. She is pressing her cheek to the freezing glass, holding her teddy bear, staring dead into the black hedges. Good. There is a man standing just past the heavy iron gates. He has his hands buried deep in a thick coat, totally frozen in place, staring straight up at the little girl's window. He does not pace like a guard. He just waits like a shadow that learned how to breathe. Good. Most kids would scream for their mothers. But Sophia? She does not make a sound. She grips her stuffed bear so tight her knuckles turn white, her breath leaving a tiny fog circle on the glass. I see you, she whispers to the toy. I see you back. Good. It is completely heartbreaking. The poor girl is already attaching herself to the monsters in the dark, and all the way across the city, Elena is absolutely losing her mind. 11 desperate phone calls. By the 9th, the tears are gone. Good. Xavier hits her with the heaviest weapon in the world, total crushing silence. He lets her sweat for 3 agonizing days before dropping a single text, demanding she show up at 8. She rolls up 2 minutes early, and you can smell the desperation. Good. Her fancy driver is gone. Hawk watches her climb the icy front steps without an umbrella, shivering as the guards stare through her like she is already dead. Her whole outfit is a masterclass in psychological manipulation. The diamonds and silk are gone. Good. She is wearing a cheap gray sweater. Her hair is flat, and she literally rubbed the skin around her eyes raw to look like she has been sobbing for days. She is trying to play the innocent martyr, crushed by the cruel weight of lies. Good. They strip away every ounce of her comfort by dragging her into the cold, formal sitting room. Donna Lucia is perched in a high-backed chair like a judge ready to hand down a death sentence. Marco and Hawk stand like brick walls in front of the doors. Xavier is sitting directly across from her, completely stripped of his usual warmth, radiating pure ice. Elena takes one look at the room and drops the idea of holding his hand. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? Good. She tries to blame the video on's ghost technician. She swears the files are fakes. When all that fails, she actually tries to use their love against him, throwing it in his face that she was supposed to be his wife. It is the most desperate poker play imaginable. But Xavier does not even blink. He slowly sets his coffee mug down on the table and just drops one word into the quiet room. Sebastian. Elena tries to play the confused, innocent fiancé, but Xavier just completely guts her reality. Good. He lists out every single sin her brother committed, right down to the $3 million moving through fake shell companies. For one tiny fraction of a second, her mask slips. Her eyes flutter, just a hair longer than her fake crying act at the hospital. Good. She scrambles, swearing her brother just stamped papers without reading them. Then Xavier leans in and softly drops the name Daniel Cross. She sucks in a sharp breath and swears she has never heard of him. That is an interesting response, Xavier whispers. Good. He shatters her last fragile lie by telling her. Cross has been parked outside her apartment all week. You can literally see her nervous system short-circuit. Her spine locks up hard, and she forces this sick, trembling smile. Good. Trying to flip the script and cry that she is the real victim being hunted by assassins. Xavier does not buy a single second of it. He slowly pushes himself up from the chair, and he does not even reach for his walking cane. Seeing him stand there, completely healed and terrifyingly strong, absolutely breaks her. He sucks all the oxygen out of the room. The wedding is permanently dead. He lays out the rules like a judge reading a will. There will be no money, there will be no press, but she is going to disappear forever. Good. Stick with me because this is where the entire game flips on its head. Xavier hands her two brutal options. Option 1, she packs a single bag, leaves the country in 48 hours, and never looks back. But Option 2, he hands every single shred of her brother's dirty laundry over to the federal agents he keeps in his pocket. He waits for her to completely shatter and beg for mercy. But she does not break. Instead, Elena stands up, slow and dangerously smooth. The fake terror completely melts out of her face, replaced by this chilling, almost euphoric smile. Donna Lucia will lose sleep over that exact look for weeks. Elena just stares right into the eyes of the man who ruined her and whispers, "Good. You genuinely believe you have the upper hand." Good. Elena pauses in the doorway, letting the firelight catch her face like she is starring in her own twisted movie. You and I have to appreciate the pure theater of it. She wants to leave Xavier with maximum psychological damage. With a perfectly cold smile, she drops the ultimate bomb. On the night they got engaged, there was another killer in his kitchen. She steps into the hall, letting the heavy door click shut. Marco starts freaking out, demanding to know what she meant by that insane goodbye. The old lady freezes, clutching her rosary beads, realizing a stranger broke into their safe house. Xavier just turns to stone. It is a harsh truth, but sometimes the deadliest hit does not come from the enemy you are staring at. It comes from the shadow you never bothered to look for. Good. Xavier cannot even move his legs. The irony is just suffocating him right now. He realizes that if Elena had been slowly feeding him poison for weeks, it perfectly explains his headaches and extreme exhaustion. Good. But that horrific collapse at the dinner table, the instant shaking, the blood pouring from his mouth, right after he took a bite that was way too violent. That brutal reaction did not match Elena's slow burn method at all. Good. It means some totally different monster poisoned his plate. Before Elena even makes it to the street outside, Xavier is already on the phone with his private doctor. He orders the guy to run his blood from that night again, looking for a second poison. In life, we often blame the loudest storm for all our damage, while a quiet flood destroys our foundation. Xavier hangs up before the poor doctor can even take a breath, demanding answers before sunrise. Exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes pass in absolute agony. When Dr. Greco finally walks into the study, the man looks like a ghost. His skin is the color of old newspaper. He slides one sheet of paper across the desk, his hand shaking uncontrollably as he points to a specific line. Elena's poison is there, sure, but hiding right underneath it is something far worse, tetrodotoxin. The whole room just stops breathing. Marco starts yelling, demanding to know what that means. It is pufferfish venom, no cure. A drop the size of a grain of rice shuts down your lungs in 30 minutes flat. It is a bitter lesson. Sometimes, the truth we demand to see is the exact thing that destroys us. Here is the sickest part of this whole movie, guys. That poison keeps you totally awake while you slowly suffocate to death. Xavier is sitting there, trying to wrap his head around the fact that he should be in a body bag right now. He snaps at the doctor, demanding to know how he is even breathing. The doctor just stares at him like he is looking at a ghost, completely mind-blown. The universe has a wild sense of humor. The doctor explained because Xavier only took a small bite, and because Elena had been slowly poisoning him for weeks, his liver went into maximum overdrive. Elena's slow poison literally mutated his body and acted as a shield against the second killer's fatal dose. Think about the crazy irony there. The person trying to slowly destroy him kept him alive. Let us pause the movie right here and look at this together. Xavier freezes as the total insanity of the situation washes over him. The woman he loved tried to paralyze him, and accidentally saved his life from a fast-acting death sentence. For a long minute, but he cannot even blink. Then he slumps back in his heavy leather chair and lets out this broken, silent laugh. It is the hollow laugh of a man who just survived getting murdered twice in one night. Marco shatters the quiet, totally cold, asking who slipped in the real killer poison. Xavier runs the timeline in his head like a machine. Elena walked into the kitchen at 7:42. The sous chef Vincent put the final sauce on the plate. Hawk's face turns to stone. Life is funny. The people serving a smile often carry the knife. A guilty man running for his life always makes the same dumb mistakes. Vincent completely panicked. Hawk chimes in, saying the chef ditched his apartment over in Astoria 6 hours ago, grabbing nothing but his passport and a cheap gym bag. Marco hits the keyboards and pulls up the guy's entire life story in 11 minutes flat. Turns out, Vincent used to work at a steakhouse down in Atlantic City. If you dig through all the fake corporate paperwork, that restaurant leads straight back to the Kane family's dirty money. The fingerprints of a rival mob boss are suddenly painted all over this mess. Xavier just paces back and forth, endlessly twisting his father's old ring on his finger just to keep his sanity intact. When you build your house on secrets, do not be shocked when it falls. Xavier starts talking out loud, mostly just to keep his own brain from shattering into a million pieces. 2 different poisons. 2 entirely different types of crazy at play. His mother, sitting there like a spider waiting in her web, tells him to explain it. And he nails it. Elena and Sebastian are just arrogant narcissists. They needed him alive but totally broken, so they could slowly drain his bank accounts while making him think he was losing his mind. But Victor Kane? That guy is a completely different breed of monster. Kane wanted Xavier dead and buried. By sneaking his deadly venom right underneath Elena's weak poison, Kane set up the perfect trap where the new bride would take all the blame. We always fear the enemy attacking from the front, forgetting the smiling neighbor. It is sickening to admire the evil genius of Kane's plan here. Sebastian's fake papers gave the cops a perfect motive. Elena would have been locked up immediately, and probably quietly murdered in her cell to keep her mouth shut. Then Kane would just waltz into the empty throne, using the book Elena stole to swallow the Marchetti Empire in days. His mother grips her silver cross tightly, a woman of violence hiding behind a symbol of peace. Xavier suddenly feels this twisted pity for Elena. She was just a disposable pawn in a massive game, totally blind to her own doom. She actually thought she was walking away a free woman. The saddest joke of all is believing you are the one pulling the strings. Right up until the exact moment you feel the scissors cut your own wire. Marco spells it out. This is a 3-way war, and Victor Kane is playing all of them like a cheap fiddle. This is exactly where the story shifts from a chess match to raw, bleeding tragedy. Brilliant strategies shatter the second someone touches what you love. Hawk bursts into the room, totally dropping his bodyguard routine. The kid is gone. Before the final word even registers in Xavier's tired brain, his broken body takes over. He sprints down the hallway fueled entirely by blind terror, smashing the door to the guest room open. The blankets are torn apart. A tiny pink shirt is thrown on the floor. The heavy locks on the window have been cut clean through. You can outsmart 100 enemies. But the universe only needs one weak spot to completely break your heart. Looking at that window, you can see the freezing cold precision of a complete psychopath. Someone cut a perfect circle in the thick glass using an industrial torch just to reach the lock. This was not some random robbery. The guy who did this was a highly trained ghost. The nanny Maria is slumped over on the mattress, completely out cold, with a tiny bruise on her neck from a high-pressure drug needle. The doctor checks her pulse, guessing she will be knocked out for at least 5 hours. It was a perfectly measured hit. Xavier steps out into the freezing night air, scanning the dark yard. And there, sitting alone on the whetstone's patio, is a little stuffed bear, staring up at the sky with one black button eye. In the end, the darkest violence always leaves the most innocent collateral. Good. That lonely little bear on the stones is a brutal gut punch. It was ripped right out of her tiny hands. Just past the fence, the soft mud tells an even worse story. 2 deep lines dragging off into the dark, showing exactly how hard she fought back. Good. Hawk reads out the terrible news. 3 security cameras went completely dead for 8 minutes and the alarms never made a sound. It is an inside job. Whoever took her knew exactly how to slip through their $1 million security system. Good. Xavier walks back to his desk, sliding open the bottom drawer, and pulls out a heavy dark pistol. The chess match is officially over. He is not a businessman anymore, he is a father hunting for blood. If you push a desperate man into the dark, good, do not be surprised when he finally becomes the monster. Good. It is pathetic to see how easily loyalty is bought and sold on the street. It takes less than 30 minutes to find Bruno, a guard drowning in a $1 million gambling debt. They strap him to a chair under a single bare light bulb. Hawk just stands in the corner, good, projecting pure, terrifying violence without lifting a finger. It is a masterclass of fear. But the second Xavier walks in and slowly takes off his jacket, Bruno just shatters. He starts sobbing, weaponizing his own guilt. Good. He cries about his sisters back in Italy and a baby on the way, begging that Cain promised nobody would get hurt for 200 grand. He uses his family to justify selling out a child. Greed will make a man trade his soul, good, but cowardice will make him blame his own family for the terrible price tag, good. Stick with me here, because Xavier is done talking. He skips right past the interrogation phase, grabs Bruno by the throat, and lifts the guy 3 inches right out of his chair. He screams in his face, demanding to know where his little girl is. Good. Bruno is practically choking on his own tears, swearing on his life that he does not know. While he is crying, Marco ignores the guy entirely, ripping his phone apart to track the digital breadcrumbs. He finds the drop spot in seconds. Good. The package is headed to Pier 17 over in Brooklyn by 1:30 in the morning. It is an abandoned shipping yard that secretly belongs to the Cain family. It is a total death trap. Sometimes, to save the thing you love most, good, you have to willingly walk straight into the gates of hell. Good. All right, hit pause for a second. Look at Donna Lucia walking into this interrogation room. The woman doesn't just enter a space, she completely owns it. She ignores the crying guard like he's a piece of trash on the floor. Xavier knows Victor Cain is setting him up, but here is the kicker, he's going anyway. Why? Because a little girl risked her own neck to save his. The criminal underworld isn't exactly known for charity, but that trauma bond is real. The bitterest part? Xavier knows it's a suicide mission. Good, but his conscience won't let him walk away. The lesson here is simple. True loyalty isn't about doing what's safe. It's about honoring the debts of the heart, even when it leads you straight into the fire. Good. Now watch Marco go to work. This guy doesn't just plan, he orchestrates. First layer? Kick the front door down, loud and dumb, giving Cain exactly the meathead response he wants. Second layer is the quiet guys sneaking through the basement. But the third layer? That is Donna Lucia's absolute genius. She literally uses a local priest to manipulate the cops into raiding Cain's house and the warehouse at the exact same time. It's brilliant, right? Marco actually bows to her, and honestly, I would too. The lesson here? Good. Never play checkers with someone who's playing 3D chess. When you're up against someone trying to control the board, the best move is to flip the whole table and let the authorities do the heavy lifting for you. Good. You have got to see this twisted little family moment. Xavier literally drops to his knees in the hallway, pressing his head to his mother's hand like he's asking for a blessing to go commit murder, and Donna Lucia. She spins it so smoothly. Good. Making his bloody revenge tour sound like a holy crusade. It strips away his guilt so he can pull the trigger without shaking. Meanwhile, cut to poor Sophia waking up in the pitch dark. The smell of rotting brick and stale smoke hits her, and it hits us too. But it's total isolation, designed to make her feel tiny. Here's the reality check, guys. The most dangerous weapons aren't guns. They read the stories we tell ourselves to justify the terrible things we about to do to each other. Good. Stick with me here, because this visual is going to absolutely break your heart. They have got Sophia's little wrists strapped tight with heavy-duty zip ties. But then get this, they shoved a brand new stiff-as-a-board teddy bear against her chest. It's a sick, but calculated move by the kidnappers. They take away her real comfort and hand her a cheap fake, just to prove they own her reality. But you know what she does? She actually hugs the synthetic fur. It's a gut punch, and there is a massive lesson in this darkness. Good. When you strip away every ounce of light and warmth, the human spirit is so desperately resilient that it will cling to a total illusion of safety, just to keep from completely shattering into pieces. Good. Here comes the big boss, Victor Kane. Hit pause and look at this guy's outfit. The pristine black cashmere, the chunky gold ring with his own initials stamped on it. He walks in like he just bought the universe and is looking for the receipt. Good. He closes the door with this terrifyingly gentle click. Then he looks at this tiny 8-year-old and mocks her, asking how such a little girl ruined his massive empire. He's trying to play the friendly uncle routine to mess with her head. Good. But Sophia just locks her jaw and gives him absolute silence. It's a classic power play. The takeaway? Anyone who has to dress up like a king and intimidate a child to feel powerful is actually the weakest person in the entire room. Good, seriously, watch his body language. Victor doesn't yell. He doesn't even lean in. He should sit. Good. Pause the movie right here, because you and I need to look at this absolute disaster of a family dynamic. Watch Camila Kane glide into the room with that warm milk. She looks perfectly put together, right? But she completely ignores her husband. Good. Totally numb to the nightmare they're putting an 8-year-old through. She sets the saucer down and tells starving Sophia to drink. You'd think the kid would chug it, but here's the beautiful irony of it. Trauma makes you sharp. Instead of taking the bait, good, Sophia hears her protector, Xavier, echoing in her head like he's standing right there. It's a bitter truth, but even when you're trapped in a room with literal monsters, the memory of someone who actually loves you becomes your armor. That voice is all you need to survive. Good. Xavier taught her well. Never eat what the enemy hands you. So this tiny, starving kid actually pushes the glass away. Now look at Victor Kane. The guy's a classic narcissist, and he actually smiles at her guts before pivoting to pure manipulation. Good. He mocks Xavier for being soft, then drops the real hammer. He wants this traumatized little girl to change her memory. He tells her to testify that only Elena handled the poison sauce, completely erasing the guy in the black jacket. Good. He promises she can go home if she just tells this one little lie. It's sickening to watch, honestly. But here's the lesson we all learn the hard way. Predators don't walk up and demand your soul. They offer a totally reasonable bargain, stealing your truth piece by piece until they own your reality. Good. But Sophia? She flat out refuses to lie. Just like that, hit pause and watch Victor's fake fatherly mask totally shatter. The cheap kindness evaporates, and he goes straight for the throat, threatening to kill her mother. It's the ultimate emotional blackmail. Good. You have to feel for this kid, you really do. A single tear drops, but she violently blinks it back, lifting her little chin to tell him no for a second time. Victor stands up, staring at her like she's a bug. Good. Furious that he's being stonewalled by a child whose feet don't even reach the floor. The hardest truth to swallow here is that real courage isn't about being fearless. Courage is feeling your heart hammer in your chest, knowing you might lose everything, and still refusing to let a monster break your spirit. Good. The door clicks shut, and now it's just Camila and the kid. This part is genuinely tough to watch. Camila's been beaten down so bad by her own Stockholm syndrome that she actually whispers how much Sophia reminds her of herself. She apologizes for what's about to happen. Good. Sees her own broken reflection in this little girl, and then she just locks the door and walks away. Empathy without action is just a quiet kind of abuse. But don't count Sophia out. Watch her eyes immediately scan the room. The light bulb, the cord, the chair legs, and that glass of milk. She's already planning. It's a brutal life lesson. But when everyone abandons you to the dark, you can't sit around praying for a hero. You have to take whatever garbage is lying around and build your own way out. Good. Let's jump over to the rescue mission, because things are getting heavy. Rain is absolutely thrashing the Brooklyn waterfront as 3 blacked-out tactical trucks roll up to Pier 17. Xavier steps out into the freezing cold. Good. Strapped in a tactical vest with a heavy overcoat, looking like absolute death. 6 guys fan out behind him. Over the radio, Marco cracks a joke that the cracked warehouse door is an obvious trap and tells him to smile for the cameras. Xavier doesn't even flinch. Good. He just walks right into the meat grinder. Think about how painfully beautiful that is. Real loyalty means you don't stop to do the math when the people you love are in trouble. You just walk straight into the burning building. Good. Fully aware that the entire deck is stacked against you. Good. The camera pans through this massive, rotting warehouse. Sickly yellow lights cast huge shadows over the oil stains, making the steel shelves look like the ribs of a dead monster. And right there in the middle, a single red velvet chair. Elena Voss is zip-tied to it. Good. Tape over her mouth, looking completely wrecked. But wait, look at her eyes. She's terrified, sure, but she's completely dialed in. She hasn't given up yet. Xavier stops cold 20 feet away, realizing instantly that this whole setup is just too theatrical. Good. It has psychopathic trap written all over it. We all need to remember this one simple rule. When the stage is set perfectly, and the bait is sitting right out in the bright light, you aren't the one doing the hunting anymore. You're already the prey. Good. Let us hit pause right here and look at Victor. He could not even wait 24 hours after Elena packed her bags. A control freak simply cannot stomach someone walking out the door, so he snatches her back to use as live bait. Then, listen to this. His voice drops from the ceiling calling Xavier his son. It is warm, fatherly, and completely fake. Xavier has not heard that voice in 15 years, but you can see his inner child freeze up. It breaks your heart. Good. Victor is up on that catwalk with 8 snipers, cool as ice, swearing the girl's safe. The bitterest part? Xavier still desperately wants to believe him. Here is the tough pill we all have to swallow. Good. The people who scream the loudest about keeping you safe are usually the exact same ones welding the lock on your cage. Good. Let us pause right here and look at this power play, because you and I have seen this a million times. Kane pulls the classic villain move, demanding Xavier drop his guns and walk up those stairs. He wants to strip his armor. Xavier does not blink. Good. He coldly offers a trade Sophia for Elena. Kane laughs, bragging that the bloodline dies tonight on this Brooklyn dock. But here is the bitter irony. Xavier does not panic. He just raises 3 fingers and drops them. Good. The entire warehouse immediately turns into a blinding cathedral of heavy gunfire. 2 of Kane's guys are dead before they even realize the game has completely flipped. The lesson is simple. When someone tries to lock you into their rigged game, you do not play by their rules, you just burn their whole board to ashes. Good. Heavy bullets are absolutely chewing through concrete and steel all around them. Normal people would be weeping, but these guys are numb to the nightmare. One of Xavier's crew takes a slug to the thigh, and he just drops to his knees. Good. Pulling the trigger like it is nothing. Xavier pins Kane down from behind a steel pillar, firing back with terrifying calm. The arrogant king instantly scurries into the shadows the second his ego gets punctured. Then Hawk chimes in on the radio. Good. Sounding cheerful as he and 12 men crawl out of the stormwater pipes with psychopathic timing. It hits you right in the gut. The winner in this life is rarely the biggest or the toughest guy in the room. Good. It is always the one who can swallow their panic the longest. Good. Hawk and his team smash through that rusty door, hitting Kane's flank like a sledgehammer on glass. 5 enemy gunmen are dead before they hit the floor. The rest surrender, because loyalty has an expiration date when death stares you down. Up on the catwalk, good. Kane is melting down, screaming and running for an old tunnel to the getaway boat. Xavier knows exactly where that rat is going. His men surge up the stairs for the kill. But watch Xavier right here. In the middle of this madness, good. He stops his sprint just to slice Elena free from her chair. He could have left her, but he did not. Here is a truth we all need to swallow. You never really know who someone is when life is easy. Good. Their true nature only bleeds out in the split seconds, when the whole world is burning down around them. Good. Now we get to watch the pathetic unraveling of a traitor. Elena rips the tape off her mouth, hyperventilating in panic. She begs Xavier, spilling her guts about the stolen money and the secret ledgers. She plays the victim. Good. Crying that she only wanted to escape her father and that Victor tricked her. Notice how she refuses to own a single thing she did. That is the ultimate sign of a toxic enabler. But Xavier has eyes like dead winter. He feels zero pity. Good. He casually tosses his knife to Hawk, tells him to tie her ankles, and leaves her to rot for the feds arriving in 10 minutes. Xavier just turns on his flashlight and sprints after Kane. It is a harsh reality. Good. Betrayals that are built entirely on selfish greed will always collapse under the crushing weight of their own ugly cowardice. Good. Let us hit pause and look 2 floors up, because this is where the story rips your heart out. Little Sophia is sitting there while a war explodes downstairs, and she does not flinch. That is the tragedy of a kid raised in a mafia house. Good. Her brain is hardwired for violence. Instead of crying, she twists her bound wrists, trying to copy an old magic trick. The thick zip ties dig into her thumbs, but she stays completely calm. Her eyes lock onto a glass of warm milk on a nearby table. Good. Growing up around criminals taught her one subtle rule. You give paper cups to prisoner, and real glass to guests. Think about that for a second. Even in the deepest, most terrifying darkness, human beings will always find a quiet, but desperate way to communicate a tiny sliver of hope. But that glass of milk was not an accident. Kane's Camilla left it there on purpose. Living under the thumb of a brutal monster, she could not fight him openly. She left that glass like a secret rescue note for a terrified kid. Sophia knows exactly what to do. Good. She stands up, gripping her wooden chair with tied hands, and drags it across the concrete. Using every ounce of her tiny body, she throws herself sideways into the table. The saucer slips. The glass falls, exploding into a sharp starburst across the floor. She drops to her knees and grabs the biggest shard. It is smooth on one side and absolutely lethal on the other. It is a bitter, poetic truth about life. Sometimes, good. Surviving a nightmare means you have to completely smash the exact same things that were supposed to bring you comfort. Good. Let us talk about the sheer willpower of this little girl. Those thick zip ties do not just cut open. You have to saw through them, millimeter by agonizing millimeter. Sweat pours into her eyes. Her thumbs are bleeding, but she keeps a perfect rhythm in her head. Good. 50 deep cuts, a quick breath, then 50 more. She matches the exact rhythm of her mother when eating bread on Sunday mornings. Think about the sheer tragedy of using that gentle memory to survive a kidnapping. 15 brutal minutes later, the plastic finally snaps. Good. She rubs her bruised wrists, picks up her little stuffed bear, and tries the door. It opens without a sound. The lesson here hits deep. No matter how impossibly tight your chains might feel right now, persistent and quiet effort will always break you free eventually. Good. Sophia stands frozen, realizing her cage was never locked. She pushes the door open 3 inches, staring down a creepy concrete hallway lit by cheap yellow bulbs. The noise is terrifying. Heavy rifles echo downstairs, and a gangster screams in Italian above her. Her heart is hammering, but then an anchor memory hits. She remembered Xavier telling her, when you get scared, count the doors, memorize the way back. That is how you stay grounded in hell. She slips out, clutching her bear, and starts counting 1, 2, 3 doors, then a dark stairwell. Behind the first door, a thug yells into a phone. She does not panic, she just keeps creeping toward the stairs. Remember this. When everything around you is spinning out of control, cold logic is the only thing that saves you. Good. She presses her tiny shoulders against the freezing wall, walking strictly on her tiptoes. She is completely silent, like a little ghost. At the top landing, she looks out a dirty window at the freezing black harbor water. Suddenly, good. A man's furious voice explodes right behind her, screaming at someone to find the girl. Sophia instantly dives behind a massive, dusty clay pot filled with dead plants. A cartel hitman sprints right past her with a rifle. Totally blind to the child, hiding inches away, he vanishes down the stairs. She waits. She takes 2 deep, shaky breaths and steps back out into the open hallway. You and I need to understand what real bravery is. It is not about feeling bulletproof. Good. True courage is taking that next step even when you are absolutely terrified. Good. At the corner, Sophia almost crashes straight into Camila Kane. The boss's wife is just standing there, a ghost in a white silk blouse. Camila is the ultimate picture of complicity, a woman who enabled a monster for years, but right here, she breaks his rules. Good. She tells Sophia about a promise she made to her own mother, that she would never let a child be hurt. She points to the heavy steel door and tells the little girl to run and never look back. Even though Sophia is trembling, she stops, looks at the woman, and whispers 2 words. Thank you. Camila's cold mask cracks for a second, showing pure sorrow, and she whispers back, run, we have to acknowledge this bitter truth. Sometimes, good. The most beautiful acts of mercy come from the people who are trapped deepest inside the monster's maze. Good. Sophia reaches that massive steel door. She plants both tiny hands on the push bar and shoves, with every bit of strength left in her. The door pops open, and freezing harbor fog smacks her right in the face. She steps onto the slippery wood of the commercial pier. Good. Just then, a huge burst of automatic gunfire explodes inside the warehouse. The shockwave literally rattles in her chest. Running purely on adrenaline, she bolts into a dark maze of giant shipping containers. She flattens her back against the freezing metal, desperately trying to quiet her violently hammering heart. But then she hears it. Heavy footsteps crunching on the wood, walking right toward her alley. A massive, dark shadow suddenly blocks out the moonlight. This is a bitter lesson we all learn. True. Paralyzing terror always thrives inside the terrifying spaces of the unknown. Sophia opens her mouth to scream, but a soft whisper cuts right through the fog. It is Marco, the old mob advisor. He drops down to one knee on the wet dock and opens his arms. Without even thinking, Sophia launches herself into him. It is a heartbreaking reality. Good. When you are trapped in a war zone, you fiercely cling to anyone who offers a shred of safety. Marco wraps his massive wool coat around her tiny shoulders, whispering that she is finally okay. She cries for exactly 3 seconds before her survival brain kicks back in. Good. She pulls away, looks him dead in the eye, and demands to know where Xavier is. Marco stares out toward the dark tunnel, clicks his radio, and tells his men the child is safe. It is a raw reminder for all of us. Real loyalty is never about empty promises. But real loyalty demands absolute action. Listen up, guys, because this is where everything goes cold. Marco's voice crackles over the earpiece the second Xavier hits that claustrophobic smuggler's tunnel. The kid is safe. Now hit pause for a second. You and I have to appreciate the irony here, for hours. Good. Xavier has been suffocating on panic, but hearing those words unhooks the steel cable in his chest. The fear doesn't vanish, it freezes into pure, hyper-focused lethality. He launches into a dead sprint down this rotting, Prohibition-era artery. Good. It's nothing but seeping water, slick brick, and the choking stench of old kerosene. Overhead, 2 bare bulbs throb just like a dying heartbeat. His own footsteps are bouncing off the walls, mocking him like a phantom pursuer. Good. But absolute clarity of purpose has taken over. A man with a clear mind is the deadliest weapon on Earth. Good. Xavier absolutely tears through that miserable tunnel in under 2 minutes, running on nothing but raw, unfiltered adrenaline. He kicks open a heavy steel door and spills out onto a hidden dock carved right into the freezing seawall. Good. There's a small getaway boat tied to the cleat, the engine sputtering and churning the black water, and right there stands Victor Kane. The big, bad megalomaniac's grand master plan has totally stalled out. Good. His silver hair is plastered to his skull from the freezing rain, his expensive black overcoat hanging open like a flag of defeat. But here's the saddest detail, that heavy gold signet ring is still flashing in the erratic light. Good. It's his pathetic final attempt to hold on to power. When a narcissist watches their entire constructed reality burn down, all that remains is a desperately fragile ego. The illusion of control is gone, leaving just a terrified old man in the rain. Good. Look at the way Kane is holding that short black pistol. It's gripped with the casual familiarity of a guy who has literally turned violence into a corporate policy. 15 years, the old man murmurs over the rain. Xavier stops dead in his tracks, his own gun just hanging loose by his thigh. Even now, Kane can't stop his pathological need to dominate the room. He actually gloats, claiming he waited a decade and a half to force Xavier to his knees, exactly like he did to his father. Good. But Xavier doesn't even flinch. He just calmly shatters that pathetic delusion, quoting the real autopsy report typed up by some terrified mortician at 3 a.m. His father never knelt. He was standing tall, looking the execution squad right in the eye. Good. And he went down firing. There's no greater weapon against a control freak than shoving the cold, hard, objective truth right down their throat. But Xavier dissects the past like a surgeon. He points out that his father's bullets actually punched right through the windshield, instantly dropping Kane's top hitman. Watch Kane's face here, his mouth tightens into a tiny, furious spasm. Good. His legendary delusion has just been ripped away, and all he can say is, details. They start circling each other on those slick wooden boards, a primal dance playing out over the churning black water. Kane simply can't handle the injury of being mocked, so he snaps and fires first. But Xavier knew the old man would lose his temper. The bullet smashes into the brick where Xavier's head was a split second ago. Without missing a beat, Xavier drops to one knee and squeezes his trigger just once. The heavy round rips straight into Kane's shoulder. Blind arrogance is loud, but disciplined patience is what actually wins the war. Good. The older man stumbles backward, crashing hard against a stack of wooden crates. He's bleeding heavily into his coat. But here is the truly messed up part. He's still flashing this deeply unsettling smile. Good. It's the ultimate refusal to accept that he has lost everything. Xavier closes the gap in seconds, his weapon aimed dead center at Victor's forehead, demanding he drop the gun. But Kane just lets out this wet, rattling laugh that makes your skin crawl. Good. You won't pull that trigger, son. He actually thinks Xavier needs him breathing to testify about the assassination. And then he drops the ultimate toxic bomb. If Kane dies tonight, a hidden dead man switch will automatically send a file to the feds, framing Xavier as the one who orchestrated his own father's murder. It's a brilliant, entirely evil manipulation from a man who refuses to die alone. Good. Let's take a closer look at this twisted setup together, because it is genuinely heartbreaking. This phantom file is packed with totally fabricated photos and doctored phone records. Good. Perfectly engineered to make it look like Xavier ordered the hit on his own dad, just to take over the family business. Xavier absolutely freezes. It's that terrifying moment of realizing you are completely trapped. Good. He just stares at the bleeding old man and says none of it is true, but Kane's smile only gets wider, showing off his bloody teeth. He openly admits it's all fake, but he's practically drooling over how perfect the lie is. Good. He has been sitting on this poison for 15 years. If Xavier kills him now, the media gets the file by dawn, and the heartbreak will completely destroy Xavier's mother. The old man built a fake reality just to guarantee he always had the final word. Good. Kane is operating on pure, unadulterated sociopathy here. He genuinely believes that Xavier cares more about his public reputation than getting justice for his father's blood. Lower the gun, walk me to a doctor, and the file disappears. Kane murmurs over the storm. Good. All he wants in return is the entire Brooklyn territory and the Foundation. Xavier just stares at him. His face is completely empty. And then finally, this tiny microscopic smile cracks through his icy detachment. He looks at the bleeding boss and says, "Good. My father taught me one thing about snakes, Victor. Don't negotiate, because they only know how to bite. It's such a brutal, crushing lesson you can never, ever cure a predator by feeding it." But before Kane can even process that response, the screaming wail of police sirens and the thumping blades of a chopper shatter the night sky. Good. Suddenly, the harsh, flashing blue and red lights of federal cruisers start painting the dark, choppy water. This massive raid, which Xavier's people quietly orchestrated behind the scenes, is crashing down 12 minutes ahead of schedule. Kane panics, his eyes darting frantically toward the screaming sirens. It's the ultimate rookie mistake for a seasoned killer. He takes his eyes off the threat in front of him. His hand twitches, just a desperate, instinctual reaction to pull his gun up. For the very first time in his miserable life, genuine, pathetic fear cracks his untouchable mask. But Xavier doesn't give him a second chance. Without a single ounce of hesitation, he squeezes the trigger. The kinetic force snaps the old boss's head violently backward, and his gun loudly clatters onto the rain-soaked wooden planks. The reign of terror is officially over. The man who built an entire empire on human suffering just slumps sideways. That heavy gold ring catches the flashing police strobes one last time before he stops breathing forever. Now watch Xavier closely as he drops to his knees next to the body. There's zero panic, zero emotional breakdown. He doesn't whisper a dramatic prayer, he doesn't scream at the sky in anger. He just calmly reaches straight into Kane's blood-soaked collar and yanks out a thin silver chain. Dangling at the end of it is a tiny brass key, the actual, physical anchor to all of the old man's psychological warfare. Xavier simply closes his fist around the cold metal, tucks it deep into his coat, and stands back up. His heart rate probably never even climbed as he turns his back on the corpse and slowly walks away toward the glowing city skyline, leaving his ghost behind. The first federal cruiser comes violently launching over the seawall, and the entire task force swarms the docks. But here's the brilliant part you and I need to catch. By the time the SWAT guys are kicking in the warehouse doors, Xavier and his crew are already standing there looking like perfect victims. Their weapons are kicked away, their hands are raised peacefully in the air. This is what happens when you drill surrender into your muscle memory, until the instinct to fight back is completely dead. Xavier already laid the psychological trap an hour ago by feeding the cops an anonymous confession. So, by the time those heavy federal boots are pounding on the wet concrete, Xavier's completely manufactured version of the truth is already locked in their minds. The cops think they are solving a crime, but they are really just acting in Xavier's play. You and I have definitely seen this kind of masterful reality distortion in movies before, but this is next level. The official story is absolutely bulletproof. According to the police, Victor Kane went rogue and kidnapped a child to extort a charity. And Xavier was just the brave hero, chasing them down to save the kid. And all those dead bodies on the dock? The cops are convinced it was just a chaotic shootout among Kane's own sloppy crew. They actually write down that Victor was killed by friendly fire. The little boy is safe, his mother is perfectly fine, and Xavier walks away looking like a saint. By the time the sun comes up, the entire federal agency has swallowed the lie whole. And then there's Elena Voss. She realizes she has totally lost the board, so she just surrenders to the feds without trying a single one of her usual manipulative tricks. It's genuinely fascinating to watch how the rest of the conspirators react when their world ends. Elena caves instantly. By 8 in the morning, she's shivering in a freezing interrogation room. Desperately trading off names and offshore bank accounts just to save her own skin. Sebastian tries to run, but the feds drag him out of a plush first-class seat on a flight to Frankfurt. Then you have Daniel Cross. The guy completely loses his mind to panic and chooses to fight an impossible war. He starts firing blindly at the SWAT team and gets totally shredded right there on his own kitchen floor. And the coldest detail of all? When the police wire report of Daniel's bloody death finally crosses Marco's desk, Marco just reads it, deletes it, and moves on without showing a single solitary ounce of human empathy. Just another piece off the board. Right around 11 in the morning, Kane's widow, Camila, does the unthinkable. She casually walks straight into the rival family's stronghold, totally alone. No bodyguards, no weapons, just a heavy leather bag and a simple manila envelope. The boss matriarch, Donna Lucia, agrees to meet her inside the estate's private, silent chapel. Camilla just collapses onto a hard wooden pew, looking completely hollowed out by decades of psychological torture. Good. Being married to a toxic narcissist like Victor has literally drained the life out of her bones. She stares at the altar and whispers into the empty room that she is tired. She says she has been tired for years. Good. And all she wants now is to just peacefully disappear into thin air. It's a totally heartbreaking moment, proving that sometimes the ultimate victory isn't about power, but just finding a way out. Donna Lucia just slowly nods her head, silently accepting this massive shift in fate. To buy her own freedom, Camila reaches into her bag and slides over that manila envelope. Inside is the absolute holy grail of her dead husband's entire criminal empire. Good. It's just one battered notebook filled with secret offshore routing numbers and the actual identities of every single corrupt politician on his payroll. Camila is handing over the keys to the entire kingdom. Good. She looks the matriarch in the eye and says she has no children and absolutely zero fight left in her soul. Take it all, she says. Donna Lucia places her heavy, ring-covered hand flat on the envelope, sealing the bloodless transfer of ultimate power. By noon, good. Victor Kane's entire legendary criminal machine is completely swallowed up by his enemies, and the rest of the world never even hears a whisper. Good. Let's hit pause on the movie for a second and just look at this dining room. The dust has finally settled, and the morning sun is hitting the exact same table where a mob boss was just ordering hits a few days ago. But now, little Sophia is sitting in the big chair. Good. And the absolute wildest part is Donna Lucia, a hardened matriarch who hasn't lifted a finger for another human soul in 30 years, is standing there making a little kid hot cocoa and perfectly buttered toast. Meanwhile, Maria is just standing behind her kid. Good. Sobbing into that clean pink cardigan. It is the ugly, messy kind of crying that only comes when you realize the nightmare is actually over. The irony of fate is crazy here. Sometimes the places where the most evil things happened are exactly where we have to sit down, drink our cocoa, and start over. Good. Stick with me here, because this next scene completely breaks the tough guy mold. Xavier steps out of the shadows, looking like absolute garbage. He has a butterfly bandage on his jaw, a nasty black eye, and for the first time in the entire film, no gun. Good. Before anyone can even flinch, little Sophia practically flies across the marble floor and just buries her face right into his stomach. Now watch Xavier's face. This guy has spent 37 years operating as a human weapon, a total apex predator. Good. He literally does not know how to process a hug. His brain just completely blue screens. It is hilarious, but also incredibly tragic. Think about that for your own life. You can build the thickest armor in the world, but pure, unearned love will slice right through it every single time. Good. I want you to count the seconds in this shot. 1, 2, 3. For 3 agonizing seconds, Xavier's giant hands just hover over this tiny kid. It is like he is trying to remember a language he never actually learned. But then so awkwardly, it actually hurts to watch. Good. He drops the tough guy routine. He rests one heavy hand on her head and awkwardly wraps the other around her shoulder. Off to the side, the Ice Queen Donna Lucia is literally covering her mouth in shock. Of course, the movie cannot let us stay soft forever. Good. So Marco bursts in to ruin the moment with business. The stolen cash is back, and $5 million of pure dirty blood money has just been wired straight into the orphanage. It is funny how life works out. Good. Sometimes the dirtiest hands end up doing the most beautiful work. Good. Xavier looks down at this little girl, and you can see the exact moment he realizes his ruthless father would actually be proud of him. For going soft, he tilts her chin up. She is the anchor that stopped him from drowning in his own toxicity. Good. Then we get the classic movie time jump. 6 months later, it is fall. The leaves are red, the fountain is empty, and Sophia is gently watering a bonsai tree. The whole vibe of the compound has shifted from a literal war zone to a peaceful suburban house. Good. Even Maria is no longer hiding in the shadows cooking at midnight. And honestly, there is a massive lesson hidden in this cinematic transition. Whenever your world completely falls apart, you do not heal all at once. You heal by doing the laundry, watering the plants, and finding peace in the boring stuff. Let's pause the film again and really look at the aftermath, you and me. Constance finally packs it in, and Maria gets the ultimate promotion. She is wearing the fancy uniform, holding the big brass keys to the kitchen. Totally legit. Good. But the camera catches her crying in the pantry anyway. Why? Because when you spend years running on pure adrenaline and terror, your body eventually cashes that check. Those are not scared tears anymore. Those are survivor tears. Meanwhile, good. Little Sophia is off to a ridiculously expensive private school, fully paid for by a charity funded entirely by Mafia blood money. The script is telling us something incredibly uncomfortable here. If you dig deep enough under anyone's perfect, secure life, good, you are almost always going to find some buried skeletons paying the rent. Good. Every single morning, Sophia walks to school holding this absolute tragedy of a teddy bear. Donna Lucia actually sewed its ripped stomach shut using totally mismatched fabric. Good. Which is the director slamming us over the head with a metaphor about broken things getting patched up. But the craziest character arc is Xavier. The guy goes from ordering kneecappings to quadrupling the orphanage budget and sitting in a church pew. Good. He is literally dragging his entire mafia crew, kicking and screaming out of the street wars and forcing them to buy legal real estate. The old mobsters absolutely hate it. They want the blood and the glory back, but it is such a raw truth about real redemption. Good. You do not just get to apologize and walk away. Real change means putting your hands in the dirt and fixing the mess you made. Good. The mob guys finally shut up once they realize legal money means fatter paychecks and zero wiretaps. Now, picture this library scene because the contrast is insane. You have this massive, good, lethal crime boss reading The Little Prince out loud to a little girl hugging a patched teddy bear. Then Sophia drops an absolute bomb. She looks right at him and asks, "If you had just listened to me at dinner, would all those bad things have happened?" Good. A lesser movie would have the tough guy lie to protect her feelings. But Xavier just stops. He actually looks her in the eye and admits the truth. Yes, a lot of people died because of his massive ego. That right there is the hardest pill anyone ever has to swallow. Good. You can never truly move forward until you look your own mistakes dead in the eye and own them. Good. You and I really need to unpack what Xavier does next, because it completely flips the script. This guy who used to command armies of thugs admits that he was completely ignorant. Good. He tells her that he finally learned that shutting up and listening takes way more strength than just yelling at people. You can literally see the gray hairs on his head from the stress of this realization. He redefines his whole worldview right there on screen. Good. He tells her family is not about blood at all. Family is the person who will actually take a bullet for you. And Sophia just nods, dropping her own truth bomb, saying that the truth is still the truth, even if everyone calls you a liar. The writers nailed it here. Good. It reminds us that the people we usually brush off as weak or naive are exactly the ones carrying the heaviest wisdom. Good. Look at how the director frames the healing in the background. You catch Donna Lucia standing in the shadows, quietly wiping away a tear as she watches decades of mafia curses just evaporate. Later on, Xavier is staring out his bulletproof window at the front yard. Good. Sophia and Maria are out there just running through the dead leaves, acting completely ridiculous. Maria is laughing so hard she can barely breathe, totally free from the survival mode that trapped her for years. Xavier just watches them, good, realizing that no one has laughed like that in this house in 30 years. Not since his own father turned the place into a fortress. It is a bitter pill to swallow, guys. But it proves that the second you decide to stop being the villain in your own story, good, you accidentally end up saving everyone standing around you too. Good. Right on cue, Marco the hitman interrupts the quiet moment, holding a fat folder of mob business. Xavier looks at the documents, looks back out the window at the kids playing, and just waves him off. He tells Marco to leave it until tomorrow, because tonight, good, he just wants to be a normal guy, and with that one line, the ruthless kingpin persona is officially dead. Marco quietly backs out of the room. As the credits get ready to roll, you have to appreciate the irony. Good. A tiny kid holding a stuffed animal saw right through the garbage that a room full of hardened sociopaths were too blind to see. It is crazy how life works. Usually, the person who forces you to become a better human being is the exact person you never saw coming. Good. So do yourself a favor and listen to the quiet ones. Good. So take a hard look at your own life and ask yourself what icicles you need to break before the credits roll on your own story. If this breakdown made you think, hit that like button, share this video with a friend who needs a reality check, good, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep deconstructing these crazy plots together. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had someone step in and protect you when you least expected it? Good. Or maybe you were the one who had to speak up when everyone else was terrified to tell the truth. I read all your comments, guys. I hope you all find that same kind of peace and unfiltered laughter that finally brought this mafia compound back from the dead. Good. Until the next video, keep your eyes open, protect the people you care about most, and I will catch you in the next one.
Sophia's journey in this story is a powerful example of moral courage. She tells the truth when everyone doubts her. She points at Elena and says what she saw, even though the room is filled with wealthy, dangerous, and influential adults. Instead of being protected, she is questioned, dismissed, and nearly blamed. Yet she does not change her story. This is one of the most important educational lessons. Truth is not decided by popularity. A lie does not become true because powerful people repeat it, and the truth does not become false because only one person dares to say it. In schools, families, workplaces, and society, people often feel pressured to stay silent. A student may see bullying but fear speaking up. An employee may witness dishonesty but worry about losing a job. A child may tell the truth but be called imaginative or dramatic. This story reminds us that telling the truth can be lonely at first, but it is still necessary. Sophia also teaches us that truth requires patience. She does not simply accuse Elena, she remembers details. She remembers the purse, the spoon, the towel, the packet, the back door, and even the color of her cardigan when a fake video is used against her. Her careful observation becomes her protection. Education is not only about reading books or passing exams. It is also about building character. Children should be taught to value honesty, memory, courage, and responsibility. They should know that telling the truth matters, even when adults are uncomfortable hearing it. The story's message is deeply meaningful. The truth may be delayed, attacked, or hidden, but it does not disappear. In the end, truth has a voice. Sometimes that voice belongs to a brave little girl.